This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
I learned this with my marriage as well. My first marriage was that, nobody really knows what's going on in your relationship except you and your partner. And you really need to trust that and not let external sources or look for external validation. There's no reason for that. Just stick with what, you guys have between you and I think there's a lot more truth there.
Welcome to Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan. I'm Dr. Dan. This show is about making the world a more loving, accepting, and compassionate place, one parent, one person, and one child at a time. The key to raising healthy and engaged kids is for parents to seek the same in their own lives while striving to be the best versions of themselves each day. No matter who you are or where you came from, with increased awareness, you can be purposeful about leaving a healthy footprint for your children, your family, and all those you care about while living your own life to the fullest. Today's show is egg freezing, fertility, astrology, and more with Maressa Brown. Maressa is a Los Angeles-based editor and writer with nearly 2 decades of professional experience covering lifestyle, astrology, parenting, and pop culture. Whether she's delivering expert-voiced astrology writing, doing one-on-one interviews with celebrities like Serena Williams, Jimmy Fallon, Chrissy Teigen, or Kristen Bell, developing and penning unique horoscopes for publications like Shape or brands like Neutrogena, or tackling in-depth features on buzzworthy trends, her copy is known to be conversational and substantive. Maressa has appeared in both live and tape-to-air video segment and a commentator on Good Morning America and HuffPost Live. Her content area specialties includes women's health, sex relationships, beauty, astrology, and pop culture. And she has her first book coming out next year. Everyone, please welcome Maressa to the show. Hi, Maressa.
Hi, Dan. Great to be here.
Okay. I started reading all your stuff and I went on your website, I had to do my prep thing, watch some videos. And my first question is, how did you become a content specialist on so many different topics?
Well, I knew I wanted to be a writer when I kind of actually declared that I am a writer, I guess, more to the point, at 5 years old. And then in middle school, I started kind of thinking in terms of, well, I can't just write books because that's not going to make me money on a week-to-week basis. So how can I funnel these skills and the things that I like to do into more of a career, and started looking into journalism and wanting to be a journalist. And so, journalists, we know a little bit about a lot. However, there are certain, as you noted, areas of expertise, and astrology being one of them. That's kind of like my career as well. And I'm a child of astrologers and grew up with it in our home, and got a lot of fun stories about that too, if you want to get into it. But
we're gonna get into that for sure. And I'm bringing some of my own astrological signs for you for later today, so you can
I love that.
You can empower me and empower us with your wisdom. But I am interested in this upbringing. So what was it like in your home, and with your parents being into astrology?
Yeah. So a little bit of backstory on that is that my father, between getting his undergrad and master's, was just on a road trip with a frat buddy. And it was 1969. So you can
Mm-hmm.
imagine they came across a hippie commune, and they were studying astrology. And my dad was like, "Hey, this is interesting. I think I'd like to learn more about this." So then very much like dove into it and started teaching
Mm-hmm.
himself quite a bit, learned his chart, decided to head back to his hometown outside of Chicago after getting his master's, and ran into a family friend and was like, I'd like to meet a Pisces woman, because I know my moon's in Pisces, and if I met someone whose sun was in Pisces, that would be a good match for me. So she was like, "Oh yeah, my best friend's a Pisces. Let me introduce you." So that's how my parents met.
Wow.
And
Like he made the introduction based on that astrological ask right there.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And they're going to be at 45 years married
Oh, wow.
shortly
That's
here.
cool.
So it's really cool. So yeah, I mean, it just sort of was treated like the weather, talking about the moon's in Aries, be extra careful out there on the road. People are going to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or um, my father really loves to use charts and do research. He was a commodities broker for a long time, so he very much uses it in his work. So
Wow.
he'll talk about aspects in terms of the financial markets.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
I mean, at times, especially as like a teen, I was like, they're ridiculous. Why do I have to, worry about these extra things? Like, life is complicated, and there's just adolescent problems in and of themselves, and everything feels bigger, right?
Right.
So
Right.
then to have your mom being like, "Well, you have to worry about this full moon," like,
On
all
top of
right.
everything else. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say it was also very empowering, and I write about this in my book. I felt very seen in a way that I really hope for other kids,
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
younger parents hopefully coming up to be seen, because they understood my chart from the minute. I mean, my dad was like watching the clock like a hawk when my mom gave birth
Mm-hmm.
for me and my siblings, and immediately got a chart run, immediately got some analysis on it, and they understood it themselves, right? So they understood who I was in a way that um, is unique because it's
Yeah.
a language of astrology that they understood. So they knew that as a Virgo, I'd be kind of in my head sometimes. And that with my Leo in my chart as well, like that I like the spotlight, and then they would give that, hold that space for
Mm.
me. So I think that was I was very fortunate to have that.
It's like in child psychology, we always talk about, it's like, gosh, I just wish, why don't kids come with a roadmap? And
Right.
this is a type of roadmap.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love to nerd out on the overlap between psychology and astrology.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much. One of my best friends is a therapist who specializes in psychodynamic, psychoanalytic work. So we're often, trading notes, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I mean, that what you just said right there is a very much a key motivation for me in writing the book, is that if I can just make connecting between parent and little one a little bit easier, and take a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of stress off of a parent as they're getting to know their kid, I feel like so fortunate to have that
Yeah,
opportunity.
it is. And so the book, can you give us a teaser about
Sure.
what's to come? Yeah, tell us.
Sure. So yes, we're, definitely there's a more official rollout to come. So I can't get into too much of some certain specifics, but I can tell you kind of, a broad
Yeah.
overview of what the book covers. It very much focuses specifically on birth through 3. but kind of with an eye toward the future. Sometimes I'm going to be referencing things that might not come until a little bit further down the road. Because, this is like preparing you for not only interacting with them when they're that young, but, beyond. And I also really emphasize the importance of getting to know yourself as a parent. And because I think that that's obviously so key to then being able to get to know your little one. And it's not just like, okay, here's what each sign means. I really want to educate people and empower people to understand that it's much more than just your sun sign. Astrology, natal astrology, birth astrology, it comes down to your whole birth chart. It's a snapshot of the sky when you were born. So not just the sun, but the moon and Mercury and Mars and Venus and, like all the planets, where they were, the signs they were in, the exact degrees at which they were in that sign, and then the house that they were in your chart, which is like a circle. Some people refer to it on, social media. It's like a circle chart. Sometimes apps will just give you like a listing of what your signs are, but I really encourage you to see if you can find that circle chart and try to, it's intimidating, but I walk you through it in the book, how you can better understand that and understand it for your child, because there's just so many cool layers there that really give you such cool intel that you can better understand, like, oh, my baby's moon is in the fifth house, and the fifth house is creativity. So I can really nurture, that's how you nurture someone, through their moon sign. And maybe I can nurture them through I show them I love them with coming up with a cool art project, or putting on a play together or something like that. So a lot of insights like that throughout the book. And then we also get into self-expression and learning, and health and well-being, and then parent and child relationships. And I also encourage the reader throughout the book, again, don't just read your sun signs. If you only know your sun signs, cool. That's a great place to start. But if you can use the book for all different placements. And in different sections, I'm like, okay, we're talking about self-expression. If you know your baby's Mercury sign, try to check that out in this section.
So cool. Our kids are older now. In the last handful of years, my wife has taken a deep dive into astrology, and it's become a part of our regular conversation, which is why I know some of the things I'm going to share later to see what you have to say about them. But just to validate what you're saying, learning all of this about our kids, because of course the parenting journey really never ends. It's a long-term venture. Knowing this in their later adolescence was still really helpful for us to know that orientation and where they've been, where they're going, how it interacts, where their lines are. I mean, it just goes on and on forever. And it would have been so helpful to understand that when they were young, which is what you're speaking about. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Cool. Yeah. Because they can't tell you, right, that they love art, or that they are like a Scorpio doesn't want to say what they find to be very, very private, and maybe they're very, very mysterious to people. But it's like, okay, if I had understood Scorpio as a kid, as a big sister, even with my little brother who's very Scorpionic, I would have better understood. We have a little sibling section and it's like, that's a whole angle in and of itself, right? Like, I wish that I had kind of better understood that he was more private than me and not as excited about being out and sharing his feelings the way that I am.
Yes. In hindsight, would have been good to know. Right. But, so the other thing that it's oddly not, I didn't say this in your bio, is you write regularly on parenting topics, right? It's like, this is the most obvious thing of one of our connected topics for the show is you're writing for parenting daily, weekly. I mean, you write so much. That's actually how we met, through that article on narcissistic grandparents, I believe.
Yes, that was for Parents magazine. Yep.
Right. So how this is, again, one of your other expert content areas, and being a writer on parenting as a parent to be, what's that experience like for you?
Well,
And
I mean, I've been
when I
doing
say
it.
parent to
Oh yeah.
be, I mean, in the future, because we're
Oh
we're
yes.
slowly moving our way to the other topic of the show.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been covering parenting since like 2011, maybe even a little bit before that. So it's been, a long time. And I started in my 20s when parenthood was quite a ways off.
Hmm.
I knew I wanted to be a mom someday. I was not quite there yet. And I was surrounded by a lot of people who were already very much in the weeds with it. And I definitely had imposter syndrome.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like there's definitely, it's strange because with any other type of beat that you could cover as a journalist, it's like, oh, sure, you don't have to be an astronaut to cover space. You don't have to
Right.
be a scientist to write for PopSci. Like, but when I've interviewed some sources at times and they're like, well, you know how that is about, a toddler or something. And like, hesitate to say that, I've been an aunt and I
Hmm.
have lots of friends with little ones and or kids of all ages, teens too. And but no, I have not experienced that firsthand yet. And when I've admitted that, there's a reaction of like, how can you write parenting content when you're not a parent yet? But it's like, I'm a
Right.
journalist.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Right.
I'm very passionate about it, obviously, as we've kind of already covered, because parenting is just, I mean, talking about humans raising other little humans, right? And we've all been, if you've been a child, you've, had a childhood, like you kind of get,
Exactly.
obviously it's not everything, but like, and I'm sure there will be things that shock me. I fully admit that. I know that, you're
Hmm.
never fully prepared, but I do feel like, at least from a information standpoint, I've been inundated and I've been very much in the weeds on the research and
Yes.
storytelling aspect of parenthood for a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, your research is extensive, and I think people
Thank you.
sometimes get confused with um, expert research and journalism versus a memoir. I mean, they're very different things,
Mm,
in terms of researching. I mean, what you do, what is so helpful for the masses, is going to the experts and compiling lots and lots of information that is user friendly and digestible for parents to be able to learn something in a reasonable sized, piece of writing that they can digest and then put into practice.
absolutely. Yeah, that's my goal. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I feel, I'm very motivated to do that because I really believe that information is power and, feeling like you said, there's no roadmap. And I've interviewed, like I can think of a celeb dad I interviewed recently who was like, I can't believe, he was just reminiscing on how they just hand you, you're at the hospital and your wife gives birth and then they hand you this little human and they're like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
And just kind of like the deer
Yeah.
in headlights feeling that he had in that
Hmm.
moment. And again, experience is different from reading about something in Parents Magazine, but like, there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom and research that I you can pull
Yes.
together and hopefully help somebody get through a moment like that and know
Exactly.
it's going to be okay.
Yes. So let's talk about this other major part of your life, which you're letting people know about your story, because it's a road that a lot of people are traveling, and from the people that I've talked to and the people who I've personally known who have gone through freezing eggs and fertility treatments, it is a road, and it is different, in my experience, from hearing, for everyone.
Mhm.
So tell us about your journey.
Sure. So I was married at like 29 to my ex-husband, and we thought we would be, moving down that path of becoming parents together. But it didn't work out, and we separated when I was I don't know exactly how old I was at that point, but it was in 2017.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I was in my early 30s, and I think egg freezing was very much on my mind because, I mean, at 29, when I was getting married, part of what I was feeling pressure around was not only like I've been with this person for, certain number of years, and we have to move forward, right? So that means getting married, and that also means like, oh, my clock is ticking and we got to get on the ball with like, having a kid, and that didn't happen. So then we got separated, and like, I don't know how long it'll be until I meet somebody and remarry and have a chance at becoming a mom. So that's something that I've talked about ever since. And I actually haven't written a piece on it yet, but I really feel very passionate and want to write about how, like, we talk about all these things that can first of all, that not everybody's timeline is the same when it comes to having a baby, or, expanding your family. But also that we talk about all different reasons that the timeline might be different. And we don't talk too much about how sometimes the best laid plans, like you had this plan A over here. You thought, I'm going to marry this person, and we're going to have a kid, and we're going to have a family, and this is what it's going to look like. And then it doesn't work out. And then your timeline changes and your picture changes. So like, I moved out to Los Angeles from the New York area in 2017. And I remember writing on a whiteboard. I was like writing goals and thoughts as they would come to me and stuff. And I was like, egg freezing, I might want to cover it for one of the publications I write for, start looking into that. But I was very much like starting my new life, and it was kind of a slow going kind of target for me, because there's a lot of other stuff I feel like I kind of needed to do first. And we might talk about that a little bit later, but going to therapy was one of those things. And but finally was able to connect with Kindbody, is a fertility clinic that they also do other types of care for parents to be, and people seeking reproductive health, care. And they're amazing, and they're all over the country. I worked with them on a few stories for parents, talking about fertility and this very, very topic. And I thought, all right, they could be a really great partner for me in this. And it was sort of like another thing of like, well, you just can't force the timing on anything, I guess.
Right.
I had started seeing my now fiance, and initially we were not on the same page about having a family together. And so I was just like, well, I need to do what is best for me. I need to make sure that I make this investment in my reproductive future, regardless of, what these talks are that are continuing. I mean, it was never like an absolutely not, let's not even talk about it. That's why we continued to see one another. It was like, all right, well, we're not on the same page, but we care for each other very, very much. So let's just have this be an active, ongoing conversation.
And these, let me just say, these are very, for everyone listening, like, these are very important conversations to have pre-marriage, and very healthy conversations to have. And it's not as much about necessarily being on the same page, but you're actually talking about these very important issues.
Right. Totally. I know. It blows my mind that some people don't learn these things potentially until after they've tied the knot. And just communication is everything. I could go on and on about that. And I definitely had people in my life who were like, I don't understand. How could you be with somebody who doesn't see eye to eye with you on such a big thing? And I was like, because it's not this black and white thing. It's not no, absolutely no, or absolutely yes. Sometimes people have a little bit of their own timing to get to something, right? To get to that yes. So it really felt like that was this situation that we were on a journey together to try and figure out, could we get in sync on it? But in the meantime, I was like, I am getting older. I really want to have the best shot at being able to have a baby, at some point in the near future. So let me do this egg freezing journey. And in March of this year, finally was able, because COVID threw a whole wrench in things too, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And the stress of COVID, I will say, like, a lot of women have been going through this, like, or people who menstruate, have been going through this, where it's just like stress has thrown off your period, and starting your egg freezing cycle can be very much tied to that. So I had that going on as well. So I thought I was going to do it in the fall. That didn't work out with my cycle. And finally, March of this year, we did it. And actually hope to be doing embryos soon as well, because
Wow.
we are on the same page about having a baby now.
All
Of course,
right. You got
and
there through a few
yeah,
conversations.
we got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and therapy, conversations,
Nice.
therapy, and love, and realizing, like, we just talked to our rabbi who's marrying us a little bit about this, and my fiance mentioned just that, like, he needed to see that he was with the right partner. It's like such a huge thing to know that you're going to be going through this. It's a huge thing, right? People,
Yeah.
I kind of am impressed when people take it so lightly, but
Yeah.
it's a really big deal, and we take it very seriously. And he wanted to be sure that he was with somebody he could see himself becoming a parent with, and I totally respect that, and we very much feel that way about each other. So we're excited.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you.
And that also is such a good example for all of us about the not black and white, right? So what you talked about, if you were listening to some of the advice that you were given, the relationship would have ended once you just heard, no, I don't really want to have kids. And then done, right? Without conversation, without this process, without the love and the development with both of you individually and together. And look where it leads when you can hold that space and sort of like, let's just keep talking about this, because I really care a lot about you.
Exactly. I'm so thrilled you get it, Dr. Dan, because it's like kind of crazy how some people couldn't wrap their head around what that would look like. And also, I learned this, with my marriage as well. My first marriage was that, nobody really knows what's going on in your relationship except you and your partner. And you really need to trust that, and not let external sources or look for external validation. There's no reason for that. Just stick with what, you guys have between you, and and I think there's a lot more truth there.
I'm Dr. Jen Ashton, your host for Season 2 of The Visibility Gap, a podcast presented by Cigna Healthcare. Throughout this season, we'll be tackling something vital, the women's health gap. We'll hear from real people and experts as we unpack important topics like maternal health, menopause, and heart disease. Listen in and download the new season wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
This episode is brought to you by Enterprise Mobility. From fleet management to flexible truck rentals to technology solutions, Enterprise Mobility helps businesses find the right mobility solutions so they can find new opportunities. Because if your business is on the road, they want to make sure it's on the road to success. Enterprise Mobility, moving you moves the world. Find your road at enterprisemobility.com.
How stressful was this process for you? Not the relationship aspect, the actual freezing process.
It was stressful in that I was kind of psyching myself out, because I'm an information gatherer, right? And I have heard a lot of stories, positive, but also not so positive. I even had told my doctor, my reproductive endocrinologist, who held my hand through the whole process. Dr. Kristen Bell, I want to give her a shout out. She's amazing. And I had said to her, I'm like, I've heard some horror stories, because like, they really have to get the medication it's very specific. It's kind of an art. It's a science and an art to get the dosing just right, so that it's not too much or too little, because you're stimulating the ovaries and the eggs to all grow, hopefully kind of like in tandem, sort of at a certain rate, so that you get the best results. And I had heard stories about, overstimulation, basically. And then there's also the risk of, like, they tell you not to do certain types of exercise. I like to work out. So I was kind of paranoid about that, because you can also run the risk of ovarian torsion, which sounds horrifying. So I knew a lot. That's one of my things that I've been saying also about
the
becoming
journalist
a mom,
usually knows a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like, it's the delicate balance of like, okay, yes, I know this, but that doesn't mean that will be my experience. And my doctor was actually like, it's good that you've heard all these horror stories, because some of my patients have not. And so they're like, they don't realize that, just by comparison, basically my experience, or, anybody's experience could be, not as hairy, I guess, if they know about the hairiest possibilities. So, I mostly was stressed because we're talking about my book. I'm just always trying to do too much. Kind of lately. That's the theme of my life. And so I was trying to squeeze it in, when I didn't have a big book deadline. I had just had a big book deadline, I think, submitting my full manuscript or something like that. And I really wanted to make sure that I got that off my desk before I started the medications, and because I really want to be present, and it's a lot, time commitment, energy commitment. It actually goes really fast once you're doing it. But you're going into the clinic every other day or every 2 days for transvaginal ultrasound and blood work to see how you're progressing. And it's that's why a lot of people were doing it during lockdown, because, they were working from home and they were able to more readily make those trips and find the time, because what else were they doing? They weren't going out to happy hour with them.
Right.
So, juggling that in with work and a book and life, that was stressful. Also learning how to give myself the shots, or teaching Kyle, my fiance, how to do that. That's a little nerve-wracking, I would say. Like, some people have characterized it as terrifying. Like, everybody has different reactions to being given needles and medicine and told, like, okay, now you're your own nurse at home and put this in your belly. And I get that. But I think, practice makes perfect. And then by like night 3, night 4, felt like, okay, I got this. Bruises are starting to show up, and you're kind of like, wow, I feel kind of beat up, but it's all for the greater, you just kind of keep your end game in mind. And that really motivated me. Even at times when I was like, ooh, my results might not be what I had hoped. I'm nervous about that. That's another part of it, is like every step of the way you've got question marks. So then you just kind of have to be like, I've got faith. It's all going to work out.
And how long is that phase that you just described from a time perspective?
It could be like up to 2 weeks. Mine was, I think my cycle was like 12 days. So from the time you start your shots to the time that you have your egg retrieval. But then even after you have your egg retrieval, and IVF is a different process, right? Because then you can potentially have an embryo transfer, but that's separate. So this is just retrieving the eggs and then having those frozen. So, but even once that's happened, you're like, oh, I'm free and in the clear, and I can go back to working out, having sex, doing all my normal things, right? No, you have 2 more weeks or until you get your period, until you can really get to go back to, life as usual, activity as usual. So it's really a month, at least a month. And then there's some prep going into it, like to get your medications and to talk to your providers about how it all works. And
so then from here, okay, so that's an intense month, which you persevered. Sounds like with success. And so what? Take us through these next steps and decision points, if there are any.
Oh, sure. Well, so after you have your egg retrieval, they tell you how many. Like I was in recovery, they put you under. And when I was in recovery and conscious, my provider came in and explained, like, this is how many we got. But of those, again, another question mark, even though you get a certain number of eggs, only a certain number of those will be mature. So they won't freeze all of them. They'll only freeze the mature ones. So my number was, I don't really love to, I feel like there's some kind of like, depends. I don't know. But like, I think it's not the best necessarily to say exact numbers, because it's like everybody's different and everybody's best and what they're happy about is, different. And so, but I was pleased. I was pleasantly surprised that it was better than I thought it was going to be. And in fact, my acupuncturist was like, "Oh, you're all set. You're good." And I was like, "Well, I'm an overachiever, so I'm not."
Never good enough. Yes.
No, I gotta have more. I want to really because there's all these calculators and you can put in like, "Oh, I have this many eggs, and I'm this, and I had them retrieved at this age," and so then it will give you like a percentage chance of like what, chance of a live birth you have. And I'm just like, I want to get that percentage up. So, and we've got, now that we're on the same page, like we're like, all right, let's do some, not just eggs, let's do the embryos. Cause then we'll have those set aside as well. So I'm hoping to do that in August. Another moment when there might be a time to like kind of get it done before I just turn 39. And also, like at the tail end of my book stuff, it's almost going to be going to press at that point.
Nice.
So
Nice. Yes.
And then we're getting married in February, and
nice.
Hope to continue down that exciting path, soon thereafter.
Well, congratulations. And it's such a wonderful story for everyone to hear about these timelines that we have in our head and the way that we think things are going to, we all have most of us have ways we think things are going to go. We have these ideas growing up in one way or another. And as you point out, a lot of life and a lot of circumstances unfolds, which often change some of these ideas that we have. And it's one of the most important human characteristics of emotional intelligence is flexibility and adaptability, right? Being able to be open and adapt to what is before you. We often talk about mindfulness as well, right? Being accepting of the reality that we are in and go from there. And I'm not saying there were not some tough times and disappointments along the way. However, you kept at what you were looking for, and seems
That's
like
right.
Finding a way to achieve, because you're an achiever, what you were setting out with relationship and family.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel seen. Yeah, it's kind of been how I've been my whole life with all different things, like, in terms of my career. And I'm very it's the Leo, go-getter and optimistic. And I think of someone like a Leo, Barack Obama is one of my Leo icons. He was very much persistent and positive and upbeat and sunny, even in the toughest times.
Well, you just took us back. You just took it back to astrology. So can I throw something at you here?
Sure, of course.
Okay. So, growing up, I always knew that I was Gemini because, of course, that's the simple way that everyone looks at things like this. But I have more information. So Gemini sun, Scorpio rising, Libra moon, My north node is in Pisces and my south node is in Virgo.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
So can you tell us kind of what that means?
Absolutely. Sure. So with your sun being in Gemini and your moon, you said in Libra, right?
Yes.
Both air signs. If I had your chart in front of me, I could tell you a little bit more specifically if they're like how closely they sync. But just based on the fact that they're both air signs, there's a harmony there between, so your sun is your core identity and your moon, as I mentioned previously, is like how you want to be nurtured, but it's like, I like to explain it as your emotional compass. So your core identity and your emotional compass are in harmony and in this very much like kind of people oriented way. Like I what you just said to me just very much illustrates. It's so cool when you hear somebody's placements and they just very much illustrate what the person is doing in their life. And I just feel like that says to me that you're very, and Libra is the ruler of the 7th house of partnership. So I would imagine partnering is very important to you, like not obviously just in like that romantic sense, but with, business partners and, your kids and just like one-on-one interaction is like very fulfilling and nurturing for you. But in general, air signs like Gemini and Libra are invested in people and so being social. I would imagine lockdown was probably kind of difficult for you because that was like my Gemini people and my Libra people who I noticed were just like, what? When is this going to end? I need to be like, they were just like glued to Zoom and FaceTime all day, every day, as much as they could be, and didn't mind it because that like you need that, and thrive on it. But Scorpio rising, my honey's a Scorpio rising too. I know, and I have a lot of friends who are Scorpio rising. It's co-ruled. Scorpio is a water sign, a fixed water sign. Fixed being like there's 3 types, modalities of signs. So not only do we have the elements, water, fire, earth, air, but we have the modalities, fixed, cardinal, and mutable. And I get into that in the book some, which I think is really a fun way to look at things that people haven't quite looked at necessarily in that way before, because it's a way to see like, this is kind of like your kid's personality type or a person's personality type, right? Fixed is very much like, I find something I like and I like it forever.
Right.
And I have a plan and I'm going to stick to it and very much follow through almost to a fault sometimes, There's a little bit of a lacking of flexibility with fixed energy. Mutable is very adaptable. They also suffer from indecisiveness. And then cardinal are like the go-getters, love big picture thinking, may not be the best to follow through, kind of always looking for that shiny new thing. And so Scorpio's fixed, but that means that you're rock steady. That's how well, first of all, I should back up a second. Your rising sign is how you present to the world. That's how people perceive you. Not necessarily like your sun is how you see yourself and who you are at your core, right? But your rising is how it's like your brand. And Scorpio is very family oriented, and water signs, all the water signs are. But there's also like this depth thing going on with Scorpio. You really want to get under the surface. You really want to talk about like, what are those skeletons in the closet?
Yeah, let's be real here. Let's be real here. Let's go straight to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think it's super interesting. You told me your North Node, because North Node is like what you're moving toward in this life, whereas the South Node is kind of like your comfort zone, what you already know, either from past life or early life. So my sister actually is a doctor, naturopathic doctor, and she has North Node in Pisces as well. And we've been talking about that a lot. And it's like, Virgo, that Virgo is the day-to-day routine stuff and like making lists and checking things off. And like, that's very satisfying being in the weeds like that. But Pisces is like the stuff you can't necessarily put your finger on. It's the spiritual stuff, dreams, healing. I mean, both, I like to say Virgo likes to heal too. It's very service oriented. But it's more in those practical ways. And Pisces wants to is the ultimate empath. So you are totally doing your North Node, I would say, by helping people heal through conversation, which is, your Gemini and Libra. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, that totally fits. Thank you for that. And it's fun to watch you. It's fun to watch you do your thing. How I just imagine how your mind is putting all of these things together. So to one last question, and then we're going to go to the parent footprint moment question. And this relates to your book, which I can't wait to come out. And I hope we can have another conversation and do a deep dive about your book when that happens.
Me too.
So if you're a parent, and then this here, I know this is not everything, but this is some of the some of the main signs. What are you thinking about when you're parenting a young person with my sign? I'm just trying to help people see how this information can get them to think about their kids and make parenting decisions.
Absolutely. Sorry, could you just repeat, Dr. Denton? When they have that information in front of them, how can they use it?
Right. Exactly. So if you as a parent know that you have this kid like me that has these signs, what are you thinking about as in your parenting of that little person?
So specifically your placements, you're saying?
Yes.
Your signs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just as an example. Just as an example.
Little Dr. Dan, got it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, so if I had a child, I saw those placements, I would say, we talk about in the book that Gemini is very much, it's ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication. Most of us know Mercury from Mercury retrograde and are all freaked out about Mercury retrograde. And I don't blame you. And I have a lot more to say on that as well at a later date, hopefully. There might be another project coming down the road. We'll see. But obviously, there's a lot more than just retrograde. When it comes to Mercury, it is how you express yourself and take in information. And as my mentor pointed out to me recently too, Gemini is not just wonderful at communicating, but you are also very, very adept listeners, which is obviously very much you're doing your Gemini. So I would understand that my child, has this propensity to take in information and then disperse it as best they can. Like they're constantly on a mission to do that. And Libra moon, really wanting to partner, really wanting to do things one-on-one. Let's play together one-on-one. Let's get you on a play date early on with a little one. You're a peer who you can partner with on a little game or puzzle or something like that, or just hang out together. I'll bring my best friend's kid and I know that my kid's going to be really happy to do that, to hang out. And what else? Scorpio rising. I would not be surprised if my kid was just very had a charisma about them that, kind of drew people in, and also perhaps was very interested in having family time. I mean, kind of very much respecting family time. There's this reverence for tradition that kind of comes with Scorpio energy. And then because the North Node being in Pisces, you could, just keep in mind, there's a sensitivity there. You want to nurture the interest in the ethereal and spiritual and magical, maybe some early Harry Potter or something like that. And talking about one thing I talk about in the book a lot with Pisces energy is that they are so sensitive and they are taking in so much. And something I talked to my sister about too as a doctor, you're taking in so much energy of other people all the time. It's really important to be setting a boundary and really being able to differentiate, this is mine and that is yours, from a very early age. And I think
yes, little Dr. Dan understands that comment right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can just kind of look at all these different pieces and figure out ways that you can meet your kid where they're at, right? And see the world through their lens, through their perspective, in order to offer them what they need. And I also want to quickly mention too that like it was through talking to my therapist and my friend who's a therapist that as I was writing the parent-child part specifically in the book, the how you connect and how you clash, I initially was like, well, traditionally you might say like, here's a way to get your kid to do what you want based on their astrology, right? But I'm not writing that. That's absolutely, I kind of like early on refused. That's not the voice of this book. This book is, how can the parent adapt to hold the most space for their kid?
This is so cool. Maressa, it is so cool.
Thank you.
It's this information for a parent to have when the young being hits this realm. I mean, it's just right there, and you just scratched the surface. In doing this through my signs and placements. It'd just be so helpful. Like, it would have been so helpful for us to have this for our kids when they came into this world. It explains so much about this disposition and this nature that our kids come in with. And they are these beings before we can even influence them. They're already these certain beings with certain proclivities and orientations. So cool. Cannot wait to learn more from your book and our future conversation about it.
Yes,
okay.
Me too.
So, are you ready for the parent footprint moment question?
I am.
Okay, here we go. Tell us about a time that you became aware of yourself as an individual, or an awareness of yourself as a parent to be, or an awareness of your own parents, and whatever that new awareness was, it had a positive impact on your own life and those you love.
Definitely. So I can't say enough about the power of therapy. I just think that it's like, I don't understand why we don't treat it the same as going to the gym or taking walks or doing breath work or any of that. I think it's just, it's not necessarily that you have to have, be struggling to benefit from it. And when I separated from my ex and moved across the country, I was fortunate enough to have a very close friend who is a therapist, who I've mentioned previously with you, who, encouraged me to do some healing and self-exploration around what I had just been through, and to kind of figure out the roots of it as well. And in an effort to not only understand the past, but to make sure that I had the brightest possible future so that I wouldn't repeat history. So it was very much a priority when I moved to Los Angeles to get a therapist right away and start working through that. And I've been working with her since 2017, and I just feel like I've made a lot of personal growth, and there've been a lot of aha moments, of course, along the way. But just, on a regular basis, being able to understand, like, okay, I've made these choices because I was raised in a certain way, and I saw certain things growing up, perhaps, that I thought, oh, that's normal, or that's, I'm comfortable with that because that's how my parent behaved. Right. And also understanding myself astrologically, I guess, like I said, I like to kind of find the connections between my therapy and astrology. Now I understand myself not only from a psychological perspective, but astrological. And I can be like, all right, I get it. I'm service oriented. I want to try to help people. I want to give of myself. And that's how I show love. But I also, there's a line, right? And then there's only so much you can do. And there's only so much you can't heal somebody for them.
Right.
So that was a huge lesson for me. One of many in therapy. And I guess that's what I'll stick with here.
Yeah.
For my response to you.
It's so, it's counseling, therapy, psychotherapy. It is such a privilege and an opportunity to be able to have someone that you trust, who you feel gets you and is skilled in helping you become more aware of who you are, why you are who you are, and help you decide how you want to be, or guide you in
Yes,
of who you want to be based on your own individual personhood and upbringing.
absolutely. Yeah. It's I feel very, very, very fortunate. I'm so grateful that I have my therapist. She's like my angel. And
Hmm.
um, even though like I can see the growth and I can see the change in how I handle certain situations now, and I'm very hopeful that I'm healing generational trauma, um, that I don't want to pass on to my child one day. It's always a work in progress, and
Yeah.
there's always more, and then situations will arise that you're like, I didn't think I would behave this way still, but I
Yeah.
was triggered.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Right. Right. No matter how we grow intellectually, still emotionally and physiologically, we still act in those other ways at
yep.
times, right? Yeah.
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 But I love the humanness of it all.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, your child, your future child or children, um, are very lucky and blessed that you have this awareness and that you're doing this work, not only on yourself and your own healing, but also the work you're doing in astrology and connecting the parent child piece to this really important understanding of these aspects of a human being and what they bring to the world.
thank you. That means a lot.
So cool.
Yeah.
So tell everyone, like where to look for the book, like timing, and also again all of your other writing, and where to find everything else that you're doing at the same time.
Sure. So I would say the best place to stay abreast of all of the latest on the book and my writing would be to follow me on Instagram. It's Maressa Sylvie, Sylvie, which is my middle name, but I'm Maressa Brown.
Hmm.
And so you'll see my byline around on currently on Parents, Pop Sugar, Shape, and InStyle. I do have a piece coming out about my egg freezing journey on InStyle soon, so I'll be promoting that as well. And then the book will be out February 14th is the current
Oh,
pub date.
nice, nice.
And also we'll be keeping people up on the pre-order and availability of the book on my social. So Maressa Sylvie is probably the best spot, or maressabrown.com. And soon I'll also have a tool on my site where you can run a chart, whether you want to do it for your
Oh,
baby or
that
yourself.
that is really cool. All right,
Yay.
nice. Maressa, thank you so much for joining us today, and this is just great stuff. I'm so excited for your book, your work, and everyone check out her website. There are articles on just about everything that you can possibly be interested in related to culture, your relationships, parenting, beauty, fashion, you name it. Maressa has research and opinion about it. Okay.
Thanks, doctor.
Yeah. All right, everyone. That is it for today. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for your 5-star reviews, for sharing these shows with people you know will benefit, and continuing to bring amazing people to our community. Do your best to be the person you want your child to become, and ask yourself the guiding question I ask myself each day: what footprint do you want to leave? This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Strummer Man, composed and performed by Pro Tunes. Artwork is by Garrett Ross. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parent Footprint Podcast, and on Twitter at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, go to exactlyrightmedia.com.